Finance and National Planning Minister Dr. Chimweka last week Friday presented a 253.1 billion kwacha proposed national budget for 2026, an increase of 36 billion from 2025 allocation of 217.1 billion kwacha. The conversation around the post-budget analysis continues, and tonight this is what we're going to be focusing on with our guests. Thank you so much for joining us for Monday's edition of Diamond Live. I'm your host. My name is Andrew Mwansa.
Yeah, thanks a lot for joining us, and I'm Cheswa Kapasa. Quite a number of things happening in the news tonight, and one of the things we're also looking at is, violence seems to be mushrooming again. The president has, on many occasions, spoken about how much of peace there is now under the new dawn. But is this really what we're seeing? That's an item later we'll be looking at on the show.
And I am Chimweka, Chileshe. Quite a number of conversations that we'll be having. But good to see you for another week, gentlemen. A good brother here, Andrew Mwansa. I'm proud. Andrew Mwansa finally has a phone. And I think for me, that's the highlight of the day. And I know we start off with today in a snap, but for me, that's my day in a snap for today, that Andrew Mwansa finally has a phone. Ever since I've known Andrew Mwansa, from literally student days. Literally student days. No, for real, am I lying? I've known Andrew Mwansa when he was contesting for Nzasu. To now, I can confirm to you that finally Andrew Mwansa has a phone. He's been using devices all these years.
What about Cheswa?
Well, I mean, Cheswa actually has had very good phones over the years. He's had good phones.
I don't know what you mean, because I think I've been communicating with this gentleman. I don't know what I've been using.
And that's what I'm saying, you've had devices. But
and you had to mention Unza days.
From his Unzasu days.
When he was running for elections.
Yes.
Did he lose the election, or what was going on?
I think if he had a phone, perhaps then he would have maybe won those elections.
What does it feel to lose an election, Mr. Mwansa? I think you're a very tough man.
I'm just being told by my director in my ear, Charles, that Chimweka has been a Father Christmas when it comes to phones. Those been giving out phones through losing them. I'm wondering why you have not given me one of your phones.
I really should have given you one of my phones. I don't know why it slipped my mind.
I don't know what it means.
Power banks are being given out to celebrities on stage, and
I should have given one out to you, but maybe
I honestly don't know what you're talking about.
Maybe I'll consider it for my 2026 budget. I think that's what we're going to do.
Well, let's begin the show with Today in a Snap. Well, there's been, I think I even wrote about it when I saw this, really sad videos of Patriotic Front members being badly, beaten by not even suspected, these are UPND, cadres. I wrote on my Facebook this evening, reminding the National Youth Chairman of the UPND, Gilbert Lisoniso, to tame his cadres, because we don't want to be traumatized the way we were traumatized under the previous administration, where this was normal, and this was the order of the day. And so this is a picture, a video of a gentleman popularly known as Black Apple, who was badly beaten, abducted by the UPND cadres, beaten, forced to profess the name of the president and profess the good works that the UPND are doing. And I think for me, this mustn't be the direction that the country must be headed into. I don't know what the intention was there. Those guys even have the audacity to film that. And the way things are, it's found itself on social media, and now the police are actively pursuing everybody that could have been involved in this. And for me, kudos to the police for their magnanimity, but also for showing impartiality in dealing with these criminal activities being perpetrated by the UPND.
I don't know where the appetite really comes from when you first of all, you know you're wrong, and you know you've got the courage to begin to film. Do you want to have the latest news?
And to show a boss that
not
look,
knowing that you're being trapped. I mean, just for the fact that you're filming, that's the beginning of crime. I mean, you're filming this person who's being humiliated. You're torturing someone, and the deputy national chairperson, Trevor Mwinde, they was just telling us that they will not.
Deputy National Youth Chairperson.
Deputy National Youth Chairperson, yeah, is saying that they will not shield anyone that is abrogating the law. And I really hope that this is something that, you know, Zambians thought were gone past. I mean, violence, I mean, people that have to be, I mean, violence is nothing that we should be talking about today. I mean, the UPND made it very clear through the president. He's been very, very clear about violence. And he always says this when he goes to events, there is peace now in Zambia, which is a good thing. But for you to begin to bring that ugly face back, I think is a no-no.
I mean, at the end of the day, actions speak louder than words. So we can have people, officials from the party, from the government get to speak, but the most important thing is action getting to be taken. If we're going to talk about the rule of law prevailing and no one being above the law, I think it's all about now seeing people getting to be arrested, because, I mean, people literally film themselves, and people, the public get to see. We've heard the number of concerns that have been raised by members of the opposition, for example, that when you have people who are purportedly from the ruling party or linked to the ruling party, sometimes they'll say these things or do these things in public, and they don't get to be arrested. And what we tend to hear from the UPND is that no one really takes time to go and report these people. We've heard some of these statements coming through from those from the party. For example, we've hosted people like Mr. Maximue. You ask him about it, where people have threatened to do all these things to even a former head of state and make all these statements, but these people, no action actually gets to be taken. And when you ask these questions, what we get told is people don't report. So I guess in this case, it's yet to be seen if people are actually going to take time to report. I know the other argument from the opposition is that they also feel that when they get arrested for what is believed to be an offense, they feel the police swing into action even before any report is made to them, and they feel that, well, let's take action now, and they don't hesitate, and their concern is that there's hesitance when it's the other way around.
Well, I mean, if you ask the UPND what they've done, one of my good friends, the district commissioner for Chadiza, Malan Zimba, will tell you that one of the biggest quenues is the peace that the UPND have brought. And I think for me, this then just undoes everything that the UPND speak about when they speak of the fact that we brought the peace. I know Tawakawan as well. There's a famous shirt he likes to wear, of the quenues that the UPND have achieved, and one of them is a shirt that is written restoration of peace. And for me, this then doesn't speak to that. Well, I'm happy that so far the UPND have spoken out. Max Muwe, I was watching him on ZNBC condemning these acts. Also Trevor Mwinde, we had him in our news also condemning this act, and he speaks to the fact that the presidential directive is very clear. And I think for me, if the presidential directive is very clear and these people are not following his directive, then they're undermining the authority of the president. And I think for me, this then goes to the president. The buck stops at the president, because he's overall the president of the UPND, who must call to order, this thuggish behavior that we are beginning to see again in the UPND, when in fact they told us that this has come to an end.
And also, I think it's also important to make mention that, in as much as we've seen this, I think one of the possible reasons why the UPND take pride in some of these as achievements is, I think it's with contrast to what is to happen in the past. Yes, I mean, we are seeing incidents like this, which definitely have to be condemned. But what people would also take note of is the frequency of some of these vices taking place. How often are we coming across situations like this?
Probably the difference is that now the UPND are much more smarter. And I was having a conversation earlier with someone
with what exactly? With the violence?
I was about to qualify my point that the reason for why we used to see so many bad things about the Patriotic Front is that they used to film everything. Now, imagine how many things have been wrongly been done by the UPND that have not been documented. The reason why we used to know about these things by the Patriotic Front is that they prided in those things. They would fume and and post on social media without knowing that power belongs to the people, and the people did kick them out. And I love the fact that Rafa Nakachinda, Secretary General of the Patriotic Front, was not shy away from mentioning that one of the reasons why they lost power was because of this thuggish behavior that the UPND is now exhibiting, today. And so now imagine, Chimweka, we would not have had known about this thing if it wasn't fumed. But how many of things that haven't been fumed by UPND criminals that we've not gotten to know about?
But you see, with the same principle you've raised, the same can be argued in comparison what would happen in the past. Because if those what were filmed we got to see, what about also those that were not filmed?
True.
So under the same principle, the same could be argued. But the most important thing is, even as it gets to happen, the most important thing is action to be taken so that would-be offenders should also see what is going on, and others should be able to learn from that. We've seen situations where, for example, those young people, when former President Edgar Lungu and his wife went to the Drug Enforcement Commission for to be interviewed there, and we had a number of people who were outside saying all these things, palatables, making insults. And we heard that some of them had actually been arrested, and this was something that was also being condemned by the party. Others, getting to disrupt also the flow of traffic in some of these communities. So the most important thing is action getting to be taken. But even for those as well that we've seen who have made these statements publicly, insulting leaders, or what is also sometimes also believed or seen to be tribal talk as well, people look at that. How exactly are you treating those from the opposition compared to how you treat those who are seemingly supporting you as the ruling party?
Well, those are our thoughts on the day's big news stories. We're going to take a break. When we're back, we get joined in by UPND media member Amos Chanda as we break down the budget.
If you ask Kennedy, what came first, the chicken or the egg? He'd say both. Kennedy was a man on a mission. He was always looking for his next big money maker.
Okay, Kapinta. Kapinta, make a jack. Tomato. No. Tomato, too many people saying tomato.
Until he realized it was in front of him the entire time. As a construction worker, Kennedy sat down and realized he could actually apply for a loan with Unify.
Wow.
So he put all his eggs in one basket.
Thank you, ma. I will deliver, man.
And he went from Kankuku Kangono to Chicken King. Unify, making life easy.
1, 2, 3, go!
Aloha. 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 Make fresh fun with Aloha. Just as easy as 1, 2, 3, and all my clothes are squeaky clean.
Quick to remove the dirt and stains and the fresh fragrance remains.
Never seen nothing like it. That's exactly why I like it.
So whether color white or black, it brings a new right back.
Aloha. 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 Make fresh fun with Aloha.
For many, home is just a place to sleep, a rented room, a leaking roof, a borrowed space that never truly feels like theirs. Martha has always worked hard, always saved what she could. But what if her savings could do more? ZNBS is making home ownership possible. A small loan built on group savings, giving families like Martha's a chance to own something real. With the Timange housing loan, Martha's savings turn into bricks, her dream into a foundation. Join a village banking group today and let ZNBS's Timange housing loan help you own your home. Timange, your savings, your home.
The meaning of life is not to simply exist, but to move ahead. To rise up and achieve. To conquer. Introducing Kung Fu Energy Drink, your push for the next conquests. Kung Fu Energy Drink. Master the power.
Welcome to an electrifying new epic of agricultural shopping. Nestled in the bustling Lusaka showgrounds, the Nemkim Agri Division is more than just a store. It's the lighthouse of advancement, searching for top-notch biosecurity, cleaning, and pest control solutions. Attention! Local businesses, your quest ends here. Get ready for a thrilling journey in agricultural retail. The future begins at Nemkem Agri Division, your supermarket for superior quality. The revolution of agricultural shopping starts now. It's about empowering your business and nurturing your community. Call us today or visit our shop at the Lusaka Showgrounds.
Good news, good news. The McKinney Heights team is pleased to announce that we are almost sold out in our third and final phase. With only 30 plots left to sell, we would like to extend our gratitude to all our clients who have supported us throughout phase 1 and phase 2. And to do that, we are giving out 5,000 kwacha off of each plot. Yes, you heard me right, 5,000 kwacha off of each plot. Our plots come in different sizes, 20 by 25, 20 by 30, and 20 by 35. Our plots come as a full package with water, sewer systems, electricity, all-weather roads, and 24-hour security. We also have a very flexible payment plan ranging between 24 to 36 months. And you, our clients, are allowed to build your dream home only after 30% of payment is made on your plot. Please pay us a visit in person at plot 88 off Salim Drive or email us at mckinneyheights@gmail.com. McKinney Heights, home ownership at its best.
Finance and National Planning Minister Dr. Chimweka Msokotwane did present a 253.1 billion kwacha proposed national budget for 2026, an increase of 36 billion kwacha from 2025 allocation of 217.1 billion kwacha. In his presentation to Parliament on Friday, Dr. Msokotwane said the 2026 plan themed consolidating economic and social gains towards a prosperous, resilient and equitable Zambia represents 27.4% of GDP and aligns with the 8th National Development Plan. The budget will be financed through domestic revenue and external sources, including grants. We talk about this budget, but also other issues that are making headlines in our country today. Our guest is Amos Chanda, UPND media member. Mr. Chanda, good evening. Thank you so much for making time to be a part of the program tonight.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Well, before we can touch the budget, I would like to pick your thoughts on this ugly picture that we are seeing now being resurfacing in the UPND of cadres abducting Patriotic Front members, and beating them badly. To many, this paints a very bad picture on the UPND. In fact, the Patriotic Front Secretary General, Mr. Nakachinda, is of the considered view that this is exactly what made the PF lose power, and the UPND is headed that direction.
Yeah, I was incommunicado because I was working on a number of things that required my attention and kept away. But I do have information that arrests could have occurred. I don't know whether you in the news media have picked anything that the police were moving to identify the suspects and arrest them. But whether that has happened or it has not, that's a clear departure from the political direction that President Chileshe has given. And I don't think that if police pursued those assailants and those suspects, that there will be interference from State House to shield those. Yes, Honorable Nakachinda is correct. That was one of the referendum questions. When I say referendum questions, when people were asked to vote in 2021, cadreism, lawlessness, and you heard even the president this morning when he was meeting people from cobalt mining, his insistence on lawlessness has no place in his government was very clear. You cannot have a functional society, whether a business environment or normal social order, where such kind of impunity is tolerated. I think that is the indiscretion of excitement and people thinking that the trappings of power can shield you. I think that we've seen a clear departure, that when those things happen, there is accountability and the due process of the law. I'm hoping that the police could take action.
You've served in State House before, and you served a president where at that time would hear some of these concerns of cadreism. You're now in the UPND. People are coming across videos like this. Do you think this is something that can really end? Or is it one of those conversations that people have, for example, like corruption, where people feel that it cannot really end?
It can end. It depends on the person sitting in the office of Inspector General of Police and whether he can get a message clear from the President and say, this is where I stand. And then whether that person in the office of Inspector General thinks that that is serious enough for him to act without waiting for further instruction. I think some of these things that you blame on presidents are due to weaknesses in statutory institutions with statutory power. What instructions do you need as police Inspector General when prima facie evidence exists that there is an abduction? What further instruction do you need?
I remember that time President Edgar Lungu was very strong on some of these acts.
Yes.
In fact, even the Inspector General of Police would warn, cadres to, to behave, or they'll face the wrath of the law. Yet these things still, were happening in our society under the previous administration, and so. What really must be done, Mr. Chanda? Sometimes the word comes out because the president has been very clear that he doesn't want to see the face of, criminal activities happening within his party and within the country. But yet these things are happening.
Especially that which is done in the name of the party.
Yes.
Political parties, if you look at the evolution of power from the UNIP days down there, in UNIP it was institutionalized. Vigilantes were a power unto themselves. Police took a back seat, and vigilantes, these are party activists who could effect an arrest. And then police thought that's what Dr. Kaunda wanted. He did not want that. Dr. Kaunda went down because some of the things he tolerated, that if you didn't have a UNIP card and you didn't have a membership, but even if you had that thing, if you were not within those circles, particularly of the vigilantes, part of the referendum in 1991 was this lawlessness. Zambians are very clear. They hate bullies. They don't like that. They want order. I think Zambians may not care who the president is as long as the judiciary is functioning well. If I take your land and you go to the High Court judge and he makes a decision that this belongs to Andrew Mwansa, I don't think that many Zambians would care who is in the executive office as president. I don't think Zambians would care much about these other things we worry about if the Inspector General of Police will act and make sure that if there's a prosecutable case against that violence, that person was committed, the audacity to commit crime and put it on video is quite troubling.
What we tend to hear quite a lot when we see some of these vices or these acts in the public domain and we don't see arrests of some of these people seen in these videos, one of the arguments that has come through from the party that you're affiliated to is that people don't report these people. Therefore, no action gets to be taken.
What report do you want? There's a video. Are you able to identify in the past when the Cyber Crimes Act was not in place, it was very difficult to prosecute offenses that are based on cyber evidence when in fact an enabling act did not act? What evidence are you looking for? Does the offense subsist in somebody reporting, or the police must see an offense and act? These are some of the weaknesses of institutions that unfortunately, because policemen don't get elected, it's the elected officials that get punished for indiscretion of people who are holding executive functions such as the police, such as the correctional services, such as immigration. Do you need me to report to you that an illegal immigrant has crossed the border at Mwami border before you pounce on them? No, those are lame excuses. The police must act when they have seen a crime.
These are explanations that are coming through from your party, from the UPND.
No, I think that would not be correct if they say there is no report. No. But even if the UPND is a private club. The police has national character in its very foundation. The police cannot wait upon a report when a crime is very visible. The police can only wait upon a crime that they have not witnessed themselves.
Yes. Well, let's talk about the budget. On Friday, the minister responsible for finance and national planning, Dr. Stumbuko Msukutwana, did present 253.1 billion, kwacha budget. Many describe it as the highest budget in the history, of our country. But let's talk about, if it inspires confidence when it talk about the content of this budget. Does it inspire confidence?
It does inspire confidence because it's a very realistic budget. And as I said immediately after that, and I think the minister struck a very sobering line between ambition and realism. He has put a lot of money in social protection. Whilst there was a lot of cheering and clapping on the increase of CDF, which is a very good thing, it's somewhere in the region of 4%, thereabout, of the total budget. In social protection, pension, social cash transfer and related activities, that's more than 10% of the budget. That goes to alleviate poverty at the micro level. So you must understand that this is a government that worries about the poor. If social protection alone would gobble that kind of budget, if you look at the amount of money put in the health sector, the biggest percentage of it, again, I think in the region of 10%, the biggest percentage of it goes to procurement of drugs. In order to fill the gap, he didn't name the donor country that has left, but I can tell you the Americans were financing our budget in the critical area of tuberculosis and HIV/AIDS to a tune of 80%. In that tragedy of their departure, I think lies an opportunity that I think that is a serious problem of national public health insecurity, that the foreign government can finance a critical component of the health sector to that tune.
The allocation to social protection was one of the areas that people expected that there's going to be an increment in because of the fact that there's an election year.
Yeah.
And many have described this as merely not addressing the real issues because you just want to appease electorates ahead of the elections, next year. What do you say to critics that, have that train of thought that, well, this is not something that people must celebrate about? It's all because of appeasement.
They must. A tune of 10-11% of the national budget just to social protection is a significant investment in human, to transform human lives. This is not a job just that you see for. If the government sees the poverty levels at a certain point, and then, for instance, there is an election next year or the other year, should those people who require social cash transfer die because there is an election year? No. It's a significant investment in uplifting the lives of the people. It's a significant investment because apart from CDF, some of the constituent aspects of CDF actually speaks to social protection. But apart from that 4% of the country's budget on CDF, translating into that 4%, there is this 10+% in social protection. It changes the lives of the people. It seeks to equalize the gap between the rich and the poor.
Let's speak more on CDF, which you have made reference to here, with the proposal of the 40 million kwacha from the current 36.1. I mean, yes, but from face value here, there's been a lot of celebration from the members of parliament and a number of stakeholders out there. But what stands out is the current bottlenecks, these current challenges that are being faced in terms of the uptake, the utilization, in a number of districts and provinces in this country that umbrellas of these constituencies. There's still a number of challenges that have been highlighted. And some stakeholders have argued that perhaps the increase shouldn't happen until these bottlenecks are addressed. What are your thoughts?
No, the increase must occur. I would rather suffer from the problem of abundance rather than scarcity. Let these monies go there. Then those whose duty it is to remove those bottlenecks will be under pressure to remove them correctly than if you withhold the money. The bottlenecks are such as capacity for the councils to sit and disperse, maybe the capacity to retire what they have spent. Those are good problems, if I must call them that way, rather than the problem of not having that money. It is a very transformative instrument that makes devolution, gives practical expression to the so-called devolution of power from central government to the districts. So CDF, if you ask me, must continue actually to increase year on year, because it goes to address people's problems that ordinarily wouldn't be addressed from Lusaka. It deals with roads and crossing points which wouldn't be seen by the central government here, but at the local level, the member of parliament, the councils and chiefs, and it goes right to the grassroots. So CDF is a transformative instrument that pushes the very idea of devolution of power right at the center of where things happen. It is investment in schools, it is investment in bursaries. It looked so awkward that I would be CDF, but this is exactly what it does. If 1, 2, 3 people can get sponsored to the University of Zambia, Copperbelt, Unilas through CDF, that's exactly what people's money must do. It must go down to the grassroots.
How does this get to be justified or reconciled? Because what we tend to hear, we had this discussion on the Phoenix FM breakfast show this morning, and we had a number of callers who expressed that they do not feel or see the impact of CDF in their constituencies. And quite a number of them came through with that particular argument and thought. And now hearing that there's a proposal of having the 40 million kwacha next year, when with the 36.1, they are barely seeing anything. How do you justify to a constituent?
Yeah, there are a lot of general statements where you are trying to compare the problems of Kaputa to the problems of Mnadi. If you live in Lusaka, in Woodlands area where I live, or Kablong, and you are trying to use the ring road, you are trying to use the outer lanes to go to the airport, you will find that the main road in Ibex has moved from the 2-lane to probably 6-lane. And that money is CDF. How then can you say that is nothing? If you go to Kanchivia, in the neighborhood of where I spend a lot of time now in Impik, you can see the classrooms, you can see deep tanks, you can see hospitals, you can see expansion of classrooms. How can that be nothing? If you go into Monze, I've tried wherever I've traveled across this country to try and just sample. You cannot say that the 200,000 people who have gone to the skills training centers thanks to CDF funding, and they've got artisan qualifications in carpentry and woodwork carpentry, animal husbandry. You cannot say that that is nothing. What would you say to those university students who are solely sponsored? Their university stay is purely because of the bursaries given by CDF. How can that be nothing?
Perhaps this also speaks to, and it's good we have you here, because you are a very seasoned, very well experienced communicator. Perhaps that also speaks to the issue of communication from the government, or even from the party, to help the government in letting people know some of these success stories? Because it seems a lot of people, even within the same constituency, do not know who's benefiting from this. They do not know who's being sent to school. They do not know which marketeers are benefiting from some of these revolving funds. It seems like even some of these people are keeping it a secret. They for some reason, do not want others to know. And that, again, creates another challenge where people feel that perhaps it's only those who are affiliated to the ruling party, who are in support of the ruling party, who get to benefit. So it seems a lot of people are not aware of what's been happening in their own communities and how CDF is working.
Yeah, I think there's quite a lot of public information that is required, which is why the party has realized that government alone cannot carry on the burden of communication, and there are communication strategies that have been developed within the office of the director, media director at the party secretariat, to support government communication in highlighting a few things that are happening and a few things that are hidden, that are not properly communicated within the government structure. The responsibility to communicate this information is purely that of government. But a party that has formed government has a legitimate role to support the communication effort of government. And I can tell you that information strategies have been scaled up to try and put these stories. The transformative agenda, as envisioned in the budget, is not just building roads, it's connecting communities, connecting lives. If you look at the democratic way in which infrastructure development was outlined by the minister, you can actually see that he sat and made sure that if there is a road in Chinsari that has been approved, there must be another one in Monza. I'm suspecting he sat down to do that because you could see the national picture with which he laid out the infrastructure development. That's why I'm saying he's connecting not just towns, he's connecting lives, he's connecting communities.
Doesn't this worry you, like what Chimweka said? Because some of these initiatives that you put up together as a party, as a government, is to be able to reach the very vulnerable in our societies. But the very vulnerable in our societies are the ones that call on TV and on radio and they're saying, look, whatever Mr. Chanda is talking about, we can't see them. When your intention was to actually reach those very people that are very vulnerable, our poverty levels are over 70%. All right, and these initiatives that you've embarked on are there to reduce the poverty rate, but yet it looks like it's merely academic. It's only people that are educated that are able to access CDF, and so really, how are you putting up your message together to be able to reach the very intended people that are living in abject poverty that you want to uplift?
I'll give you an example of artisan mining. The best form of communication is action. Between 2023 and now, 1,400 artisan licenses have been given. How many university graduates, how many educated people are in the artisan mining sector? These are poor people at the grassroots. Whether somebody picks up the theme of propaganda and says this is academic, it's nothing. There is 1,400 licenses that have been given to poor people at the grassroots. That's empowering communities, getting them to share in the national cake, because you know mining is a family silver.
Are you being honest, Mr. Chanda, that it's those poor people that came at Mulungushi to attend that conference? Those didn't look like poor people.
When propaganda takes precedence,
in English there.
Yes, when propaganda takes precedence,
I don't think that those
you have to deal with a cancer of disinformation and misinformation. 1,400 artisan licenses have been given. These are people at the community level, and I work in that sector. These are poor. You are empowering them. Some of them immediately they get the license to them. A Chinese company, Canadian company comes in. Somebody who has never seen even $10, sometimes they are seeing $100,000 because they are leveraging that license for that. What do you call that? Is true empowerment. So when somebody picks up a phone and say there's nothing happening, what would you tell me about 1,400 artisan mining licenses that have been given in the last 18 months? What would you tell me about the 90 licenses that Minister Kawuswan P.S. Apenga went to give in Mufumbu? Are you saying that is nothing? That will transform lives, because these people can now leverage that license, or they can mine themselves and they take the in this sector alone, just in mining license. How can you say that is nothing? That's why I keep saying, as a person in the media and this thing, that one of the front lines to deal with threats to national development is to deal with disinformation and misinformation. Because when propaganda takes precedence, the whole nation can look like it's at standstill when in fact not.
In fact not.
Yes.
Let's talk about another very important issue that comes out as one of the biggest highlight of the budget, is that most of the revenue is going to be mobilized domestically. In fact, others have described it as one of the most, domestically mobilized budget. 206.5 billion is coming from tax revenue, 12.1 billion from grants, and 34.5 billion from borrowing. This might look like a two-edged sword, because on one end, yes, you are proud as a country that we will not depend on borrowing, but also you are overburdening us as taxpayers, because then we'll have to pay more. And already the minister complained of the tax base, that it's small. There's very people that still keep financing this budget. How do you balance that up, and how would you give a position to that?
There has to be national pride in a nation that depends to a very large extent on itself and very minimal to external borrowing. But that is not to say external borrowing itself is a bad thing. There are only two ways. The economists will tell you, whatever you do, there's only two ways of raising money, raising capital. It's either debt or equity. Yeah. The mineral resources and other natural resources will count for equity and taxes and all those things. Then the debt is what the minister, in a small amount, 18% or a small amount, goes on to finance that. There has to be a careful balancing act, but I think that the budget that progressively goes to achieve, maybe if we can, 100% self-financing will be the best budget that this country will ever have. But at 82%, it is commendable that you have a minister that ambitious who thinks 82% of what we must spend, we must earn it ourselves, we must produce it ourselves. It goes back to we must produce what we consume, rather than just consume what we don't produce. Yes, there's got to be some pain at some point in order for a safer, more sustainable future. We must be able to finance our own lives rather than remaining. I told you it's a point of national public health insecurity, a very serious one, that one of the greatest health challenges has to be financed from outside. Yes, it looked very bad when the Americans left, but these are lessons we must take painfully and move on. If the minister is able to finance the HIV, AIDS, tuberculosis and malaria budget locally, that will be a proud moment for the country rather than a moment of shame. So that can only come from taxes, and we must be proud to pay taxes.
And to overburdening our taxpayers?
Would you rather be a perpetual beggar so that another person pays, and when they want to pull out, they pull out? Yes, there's got to be a burden and a pain that has to be felt, but that in the final analysis, it's a better thing that Zambians can pay for themselves.
Do you think the average Zambian understands that? Because I mean, that is what we get to hear, and I mean, to some this may be understandable, but do you think the average common Zambian is understanding of that? Because this pain will be felt for quite some time, and it's going to affect people's livelihoods, and this could have a larger impact on how people live. Do you think people will be understanding of this?
They will understand.
Do you think to make the government unpopular?
The beauty about the president you have in office and the majority of those who work with him is that popularity sometimes, quite often times, doesn't bother him. What bothers him is to do the right thing. We must have a conversation, and there are those conversations within government that those who are at the commanding heights of the economy, for instance, the mines, telecom companies, must pay a little more. And I think progressively these companies will be paying more so that you can cushion off the household taxpayer, and you have the corporates to pay more. But when the mining revenue is up, I think that it's a legitimate expectation that people must pay that.
But even with institutions and corporations, organizations generally, I mean, when their expenses, liabilities begin to increase, one of the common trends in businesses, your human resource gets reduced if your expenses get to increase. So isn't that too a ripple effect on it having an impact again on the average Zambian, and when you get to tax more some of these institutions.
Yeah, it is an agreed principle. Even Minister Msogotwane understands that you cannot overtax your population into prosperity. The lower the taxes are, and I think the President recently talked about, the lower the taxes are, the more likely that people are going to pay them, rather than when the taxes. This is why you see sometimes some fine line is drawn between how you tax the mining companies and other big corporations, and many people complain again because they want the government to overtax the chicken that lays the egg, and then if that chicken is malnourished, it will not lay those eggs that you are looking for. So there's a thin line between striking a balance, getting the multinational corporation pay the due taxes, and also overtaxing them in such a manner that they barely survive. Then they will not provide the social services that they provide in small communities. Yes, people must understand that when the country has a deficit, the citizens themselves pay a little more. But you cannot overtax your population into prosperity. That is very clear. There is evidence throughout history that those countries that overtax their citizens do not promote compliance, but they promote measures to dodge those taxes.
Debt service will consume 73.6 billion, over 1/3 of the budget. Mr. Chanda, what does this heavy debt obligation mean for Zambia's development priorities?
What it does, first of all, the general principle is that we are moving towards debt sustainability. For the first time, the debt GDP ratio has dropped to below 100%. What you needed was to be able to be credible in the financial market, international financial market, that if Zambia has run short of 10 million kwacha and they want to borrow, there should be people available to make that money available. So that the debt has been structured, therefore it can be managed. On a rainy day, you can still run to the international financial markets and borrow. So we are moving towards debt sustainability. The debt is still too high, but the point is that we needed to have a debt that is sustainable, and that's where we are going. And the sustainability trigger point was a restructuring, which was a very difficult thing. We were in a default junk status, but now the country is back to normal. So you can now get affordable money. You can have a reputation in the international market that if Zambia borrows, they will be able to pay, rather than if Zambia borrows, they will default. You needed to get that credibility as a country in order to be considered a respectable member of the international community.
Let's look at agriculture, a very, very key sector for economy, and we're talking about 15.5 billion kwacha being proposed, with also a very ambitious production target for maize, wheat and soya by 2031. How realistic do we see some of these? Because also we've seen what has happened to us in our country, where we have had certain targets and we have been faced by some of these natural disasters. Recently we saw the drought, which was not the first anyway. But looking at some of these external factors, some of them also internal natural factors, with all these targets being met, how realistic do you see our targets?
It is very realistic. The current level of maize and soya production is far below the capacity of this country. Even with rain-fed methods, we can do much more than that. What you require is, what is a standard average global production per hectare? You need to improve the hectare, the production per hectare. You need to deploy more irrigation, and the minister did announce investments into irrigation. You need to invest more in pest control so that the production goes up. Then all these issues of deficit, smuggling will be a thing of the past, because that money, there's a relationship between liquidity and growth. The money that will be earned through exports of soya, excess export of soya and maize, will be reinvested in capabilities such as irrigation, disease control, and storage. These are the factors that push up agriculture. The imposition of higher taxes on imported powder milk and others will boost the capacity of the local, because we have excess milk production here, but it cannot compete with the low cost of production of milk in South Africa and neighboring countries. So that imposition of higher duty on that to boost. That's exactly what the national government does. It doesn't have to meddle at the micro level. It provides policy direction to rejuvenate certain sectors that are sick. That sector in agriculture has been put in abeyance, has been put in a position where it cannot compete. Just that one policy direction can rejuvenate the sector, just by excise duty. Just that duty he removed on equipment that go into production, tractors and other, it will keep up. The clearest example of policy measures like that is in the early 90s when President Chiluba just changed the UBZ that died. There was a vacuum in the public transport sector. Just the removal of duty on imported buses changed the transport sector as we know it.
I was listening to the symposium this morning where a minister responsible for finance was the one who was guest of honor. And one thing I was proud about, I didn't think this thing was working, the export tracking framework. And he mentioning that government has been able to realize $16 billion and this money has passed through our banking system. Yes. I'd like to find out, why haven't you popularized this the export tracking framework, because the impact is really huge, especially on our exchange rate. Why hasn't there been much more,
that's why
information around this?
There's been relative stability of the kwacha, and when you speak generally that the positive government intervention to stabilize the exchange rate between the US dollar, between the kwacha and international convertible currencies, it's because of measures like that. Yes, in terms of specific public information, that is a sector-specific matter, maybe for colleagues in the Ministry of Finance and Ministry of Information that are tasked to make this information public, because then it will create confidence. So that you can see that they are actually hidden, very good information that is still hidden there, which the public has not been there. But it doesn't diminish the fact that the stability we have seen in the kwacha versus the foreign convertible currencies is thanks to some of those initiatives. Yeah.
While this budget is historic and in size and domestic financing, many ordinary citizens care less about numbers.
Yes.
I saw that the key priorities is for us to hit a GDP growth of 6.4%, manage inflation between 6 to 8, and I wonder why, because almost every budget that we've had in Zambia, our target is to be able to reach that 6 to 8 percent band in terms of our inflation, which we never reach, which we never achieve. Zambians care about the realities of power in their homes, affordable food and available medicines. In your view, does this budget speak to the everyday struggles that the people are passing through today?
Yes, it does. The ambition to invest more in green technologies is an attempt to move the dependence on power from hydro to these other alternatives, such as solar, for instance. So the investment in there, the policy initiative that promotes the carbon trading that the minister talked about, is an attempt to transform the energy sector as we know it. The open access in terms of carrier, the open access towards the transmission of power, it democratizes, it liberalizes the energy sector. Eventually, it will not be ZESCO as a monopoly there. There will be I was talking somewhere. They, oh, you're speaking for power traders. I wish I knew them, then I can tell their story better. They are getting beaten for nothing. This is a free market economy, which has the principle of free entry and free exit. These power traders are doing God's work, man. They are entering into the market where ZESCO can't go. They are going somewhere and negotiate power where ZESCO cannot even be allowed to sit on a table because of the credibility problem historically that ZESCO has had. So the power trading, the liberal nature of that sector must be praised rather than being condemned. So by getting in the private sector is driven by profit, and it's driven by profit, and it delivers services at a premium. So the liberalization of that and making the open access system available will eventually deliver power, which is one of the biggest problems at the moment.
But the prediction by so many people in Zambia is that obviously by next year things will begin to happen.
Yes.
And the story you're going to tell is that you've been working hard in the background to make things happen.
Yes.
But then this, for many, will also be a coincidence that things get to happen in an election year. And so how then are you going to speak to the people? Because even now, when you're providing 15 hours of power in these low-income communities, people are saying that it's because when you're in an election. How do you intend to consolidate your message for people not to think that what you're doing is basically just for mere appeasement, but you're actually doing the job?
That consolidation should mean that you move from Samba with 100 megawatts and you move into Chinsari, for instance, with another one. You move into Petauke or Chipata with another one, Mongo, Choma, and Kalavo. Then people will see the story. Don't tell the story just from the graphic, artificial projection because it is August 2011. But the movement, the pace at which the investment in solar technology is moving will tell its own story. Then we can just say, have you seen there, have you seen there, rather than just telling the story for the sake of it. There is no business that can invest just because there is election there. It's because there is a reasonable return on their investment. And these projects, again, don't take an election cycle. If the Samba project was only going to mature now.
Started in 2022, and I think
this government has been in office for 4 years.
What people expected was that the level of aggressiveness that you've put now must have been the same level of aggressiveness you put when the
power purchase agreements take time to negotiate. The sites require environmental clearance and all these processes. Again, this idea that doing things a year before and within election is a bad thing. The government, as I said on another program, is elected for a term of 5 years. It can do things in the first year, second. There is no cap that should be put that when it is in the fourth year, then we must have a 4-year term, if that's the idea. The president vacates office when another person has been elected. Even on the final day, when we still have a death penalty, the president should be perfectly in order to sign a death penalty, if it is a duty of him, on the final day that is leaving office. So where is this idea that the government must go into inaction in the election year because of elections?
Because there's been a common trend. In every election year, the exchange rate gets to be stabilized. In every election year, people will have power 24/7, relatively cheaper commodities, and things tend to happen. And so that's where the worry is coming from. But many Zambians or different stakeholders have compared to what will happen next year to what happened this year in Malawi. They say the same calamity that has befallen upon President Chakwera is what is going to befall upon President Haka in the Hichilema. It's going to be a one-term president.
There's no empirical evidence that suggests that Malawi, with a single parliament of 192 people, would have the same results with Zambia, which is 150 people.
Perhaps the prevalent conditions are the same.
Totally different. I don't think that Malawi has had no foreign exchange. In case, I mean, I can speak freely. I think has had no foreign exchange for the past 4 years. I can't understand. Even the Zambian kwacha became a very valuable currency in Malawi. Don't we have dollars here? You can live here as long as the market's open. The foreign exchange market opens at 8:15 tomorrow, and you'll be able to buy and sell dollars as you wish, the pound and the kwacha. So how is that situation the same as here? I'm just speaking on one of them. President Reverend Chakwera came into government with a coalition, partners, surprisingly, coincidentally, called the Tonse Alliance in Malawi. Mid-term, we differed with alliance partners, including the late former vice president, with a lot of crowd of suspicion around there, which I can't go into. The problems of that president began as early as his first year, second term, clearly the referendum.
If you're going to give that example, isn't the same with President Haka in the sense because he's so differed with his alliance members. He differed with KBF, he left the party, differed with...
the alliance.
That was the vice president of the country, and that is very significant. The differences between a sitting president and his vice president is
so
totally different.
You don't see any wind of change?
I do not. I cannot see any empirical evidence that suggests that the developments in Malawi will mean. So should we say the developments in Malawi will impact on the developments in Mozambique?
But at the same time,
Zimbabwe.
At the same time, the now outgoing president in Lazarus Chakwera also had a campaign trail, and he had quite the milestones that he boasted of under his leadership that he used to campaign to the people there, and he was confident that he was going to win, and his supporters were equally confident. But one common concern that people have had there, that some people also having here, is the issue of the cost of living. That has stood out. And we have people today talk about the cost of living in this country not being ideal, what they hoped it would be. So you have that particular common concern there. And that is why others feel that what happened in Malawi could happen in Zambia based off that.
Yeah, the comparison, I don't know whether they are rooted in political science and with clear empirical evidence that if an election in a neighboring country goes this way, then is it because it's a neighboring country?
Probably.
Should we say the election in Mozambique this year, which the ruling party won, should be a parameter for Mozambique?
And maybe
because the ruling party in Mozambique won elections.
Maybe one of the most one of the relatable comparisons is you're looking at a former president in Malawi bouncing back to power. And we've seen that the opposition Patriotic Front are perhaps seeing some hope as well, that it happened in Malawi. And I mean, our people are quite the same in terms of how trends are and our cultural beliefs and so on. And they argue that from that particular perspective, people that voted out the PF are beginning to regret because they thought things would get better for them, but they've only gotten worse, especially when you talk about the cost of living. So from that particular argument, do those who bring up that argument have a point?
No, they don't have. Let's go to Botswana, where they say, oh yeah, even there was a one-term president. But you know the Botswana Democratic Party has been in power for 60 years. What else should happen if you've been in power 60 years? You can only lose. Whether you are doing very well, sometimes there's voter fatigue. So there are certain circumstances and parameters that are totally different from one country to the other. Zimbabwe has only known one political party since its foundation as a nation.
So you don't think the cost of living in Zambia today is enough to have the UPND voted out?
The cost of living in South Africa a year or two ago was higher than the cost of living here. President Cyril Ramaphosa won elections. So I'm telling you that the parameters differ from one country to another.
So in the Zambian context, it's not enough?
It is very pedestrian, actually, to just extrapolate the developments in one country, totally different demographics and circumstances, and say, if it happens in Malawi, it will happen here. I've said, what happened in Mozambique, will it happen here?
So bring it back to Zambia. Is this to say that the cost of living is not enough to oust President Chileshe?
Is troubling. The cost of living is a daily struggle for everybody. The cost of living is a problem both for the president and for the consumer, and which is why there is investment, as you see in the budget, in social protection. The minister says we want to reduce the waiting time for pensions from 1 year to 3 months. That is the government responding to the cost of living. We want to invest more money into youth development programs. We have to invest money into artisan miners. This is an attempt to create income streams for people, and therefore that lowers the cost of living.
As we conclude, do you think, as we go to next year's elections, President Hakainde Hichilema will manage to garner 50+1 with the current prevailing challenges that our people are going through and the dissatisfaction that some people have of his government?
I'll swing it this way. I'll come and answer it. Just give me 3 seconds and ask you. Who among these opposition leaders do you think would manage 50 plus 1?
It's the people to elect.
Yeah, you are mentioning one candidate here, Sean Tembo. You can manage 50 plus 1?
If the people decide to vote for him.
Yeah, if people decide to vote for President Hichilema for 50 plus 1, why do you think you will not manage?
Amos Chanda, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you very much.
Not on Costa, on Diamond Live.
On Diamond. Maybe I should come on Costa next.
Well, that's our conversation with the UPND media member, Mr. Amos Chanda. We're looking at the budget, which the minister responsible for finance did present last week, Friday. Pegged it at 253.1 billion kwacha, but also we're looking at some of the issues going on in our country today. Cadarism, also the elections that are slated for next year, August. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Andrew Mwansa.
My name is Chimweka, Chileshe, and on behalf of Cheswa Kapasa Jr., Cheswa Peter Kapasa Jr., enjoy the rest of your night. Do stay tuned to Diamond TV. Up next is the Stephen Piri Show.
Oh, you're still...
To know where we're going, we must remember where we're coming from. Boom. Never forget home.
Umubamabamo watulile ngoma. Consistency enables one to achieve his or her goals. But that responsibility comes with its own challenges.
When that time of the month comes, it's never easy, but I must be ready.
Ukunkala kwangu pano padera, nosebenzera bana. Masiku yanangu, yomvwika bwino. Lomba yakini, umvwika lini bwino.
They say you look after wealth, but knowledge looks after you.
In all my years, as a wife and as a mother,
something always had my back in painful times.
For fevers,